Hello everyone. Before the story start, tell me where are you watching from and what time is it?
The street had no name. I knew this because I had walked its entire length, from the intersection where the pavement began to the place where it simply stopped, and there were no signs. No green rectangles on poles, no faded markers at corners, no evidence that this road had ever been officially recognized by any city or county or state. It was just a street, a strip of asphalt running straight through a landscape that seemed to forget it existed the moment you looked away. I had been walking for what felt like days. The sky was the same color it had been when I started, a pale, milky gray that held no sun and cast no shadows. The air was cool and still, the kind of stillness that makes you want to whisper. I had passed buildings at first, houses with dark windows and empty driveways, storefronts with signs that advertised nothing, gas stations with pumps that offered no fuel. Then the buildings had thinned, replaced by fields of tall grass that didn't move in the absent wind. Then the fields had given way to bare earth, flat and brown and featureless. Now there was only the street, and me, and the horizon that never got closer. I don't know why I kept walking. The street was endless, but I had long ago stopped believing in ends. The loop had taught me that. The missing piece had taught me that. I was a man who had lived through repetitions without number, who had watched the same coffee beep and the same sunbeam fall for an eternity. I had stood at the edge of nothing and turned away. I had become the crack that would not heal, the spiral that would not close. And then, one morning that was not a morning, the loop had simply stopped. Not ended, stopped. Frozen mid-breath, mid-motion, mid-word. And I had found myself standing at the beginning of a street with no name, facing a direction I had never chosen, with the quiet understanding that I was supposed to walk. So I walked. The first day was disorientation. The absence of repetition was itself a kind of repetition, a new loop of novelty that quickly became its own prison. Every step was different, yes, but the difference was always the same: new landscape, new silence, new emptiness. I waited for the reset, for the moment when I would find myself back at the beginning, back under the gray sky with the street stretching ahead. It didn't come. The days passed, or what felt like days, and the street continued, and I continued, and nothing repeated. By the third day, if it was the third day, I had stopped waiting. The absence of the loop was more terrifying than the loop itself. In the loop, I had known what to expect. I had known the shape of my prison, the boundaries of my existence. Here, there were no boundaries. The street went on forever, and the flat earth went with it, and the gray sky covered everything, and I was a tiny point of movement in an infinity of stillness. I walked because stopping meant admitting that this was all there was, and I wasn't ready to admit that yet. On the fifth day, or the 7th, or the 20th, I saw the first change in the landscape since the fields had ended. A tree. Not a healthy tree, not a living tree, but a tree nonetheless, a skeletal shape against the gray, its branches bare and black, its trunk leaning slightly as if tired of standing. I approached it slowly, afraid that it would vanish, that this small deviation from the endless flatness would prove to be a mirage. It didn't vanish. I reached out and touched its bark, rough and cold, and the reality of it brought tears to my eyes. A thing that was not street. A thing that was not me. A thing that existed independently of my movement through this dead world. I sat beneath the tree for a long time. I don't know how long. Time had become meaningless again, but this time not because of repetition, because of its absence. Without the loop to mark the cycles, without the sun to mark the days, I floated in a perpetual present that stretched in all directions. I might have sat for an hour. I might have sat for a day. Eventually, I stood up and kept walking. The tree was behind me now, a small black mark on the horizon that grew smaller until it was gone. I was alone again. The street began to change after that. Not dramatically, but perceptibly. The asphalt grew older, more cracked, more patched with repairs that had themselves decayed. The edges frayed into gravel, then into dirt, then into nothing. The flat earth on either side began to rise, slowly, almost imperceptibly, forming low hills that grew higher as I walked. The gray sky darkened at the edges, not with clouds but with something else, something that felt like depth, like the sky was becoming less a ceiling and more a space. I walked through a landscape that had forgotten it was a landscape. Hills rose and fell, their slopes bare and brown. Stream beds appeared, dry and cracked, their courses marked by lines of stones that had once been water-worn. The street wound between the hills, following a path that felt ancient, older than the asphalt, older than the idea of streets. I walked, and the hills grew higher, and the sky grew deeper, and the street grew thinner, until one day, one moment, I crested a rise and saw what lay ahead. The street ended. Not faded, not dissolved, not became something else. It ended. The asphalt stopped at a clean, straight line, and beyond it was nothing. Not the nothing I had seen at the edge of the loop, that cold absence that pulled and waited. This nothing was different. It was the nothing of completion, of arrival, of a journey that had finally reached its destination. The street had brought me here, to this precise point, and now it had nothing left to give. I stood at the edge and looked out. Beyond the street was a landscape, but it was not the landscape I had walked through. It was green. Living green, the green of grass and trees and life. A valley spread below me, filled with colors I had forgotten existed, the brown of rich soil, the blue of a true sky, the white of clouds that moved and changed. A river curved through the valley, catching sunlight that actually shone from an actual sun. On the far side of the valley, nestled against the base of mountains that rose purple and grand, was a city. Not the distant skyline that had refused to come closer, not the frozen loop city of repetitions and endings. A real city, with movement and life and people who lived in time that moved forward. I wanted to step forward. I wanted to leave the dead street and the gray sky and walk into that valley, into that life, into that world that pulsed with color and sound and meaning. But I couldn't move. My feet were fixed to the asphalt, fixed to the edge, fixed to the place where my journey had ended. Because I understood, with a clarity that pierced through the exhaustion and the longing, that this was not my destination. This was where I had begun. The valley below was the world I had left. The world before the loop, before the missing piece, before the street with no name. The world where I had lived a normal life, with normal days and normal nights, where the sun rose and set and coffee beeped only once. I had walked away from it so long ago that I had forgotten it existed. I had followed the loop into its depths, had become the crack and the spiral and the missing piece, and now, after walking the endless street, I had arrived back where I started. I stood at the edge and watched the valley live without me. I saw figures moving in the fields, small as ants, going about their days. I saw smoke rising from chimneys, the smoke of hearth fires and cooking and warmth. I saw the city in the distance, its towers catching the sun, its streets filled with people who had never heard of loops or repetitions or the horror of endless mornings. They lived in time that moved, in lives that ended, in a world that made sense. I could step forward. The edge was just a line. I could cross it, walk down into the valley, find my way back to the life I had lost. But even as the thought formed, I knew it was impossible. That life was not mine anymore. I had been gone too long, had changed too much, had become something that didn't belong in a world of forward motion and natural endings. I was a creature of loops now, of repetitions and frozen moments. To step into that valley would be to bring the loop with me, to infect that living world with the stillness I carried in my bones. I sat down at the edge, my legs dangling over the nothing that separated me from everything I had lost. The sun in the valley began to set, painting the sky in colors I had forgotten, orange and pink and deep purple. Lights came on in the city, thousands of tiny sparks against the gathering dark. I watched them for a long time, watched the night settle over the valley, watched the stars emerge in a sky that was not gray but black and infinite. I thought about the journey. The loop, the missing piece, the endless street. I thought about the woman who whispered, again, and the footsteps that followed me through the dark. I thought about the shadow that refused to follow the light and the skyline that stayed distant no matter how far I walked. They had all brought me here, to this edge, to this moment of impossible choice. They had all been versions of the same thing, the search for an ending, the need for completion, the hope that somewhere, at the end of all this walking, there would be a door I could open. I had found the door. It was the place where I began. The night deepened. The valley below grew quiet, its lights dimming one by one as the world I had left went to sleep. I sat at the edge and felt the gray sky behind me, the dead street stretching back into the endless distance I had walked. I could go back. The street was still there, still waiting, still offering its infinite regression of sameness. I could walk it forever, could spend eternity moving through that dead landscape, always approaching but never arriving. Or I could stay here, at the edge, and watch the world I could not rejoin live on without me. I could become a sentinel, a witness, a ghost at the boundary between what was lost and what remained. It was not an ending, not really. It was a suspension, a pause, a moment stretched into perpetuity. But it was the only ending I was going to get. Dawn broke over the valley. The sun rose behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the fields, setting the river ablaze with light. I watched the city wake, watched the tiny figures resume their movements, watched the world turn through another day. I was still here, still at the edge, still watching. I had not moved. I had not crossed. I had not gone back. The street behind me waited. The valley below lived. And I sat between them, at the place where my journey had begun, finally understanding that some journeys don't end. They just arrive at the point where you have to choose whether to keep walking or to finally, truly stop. I chose to stop. I am still here. I have watched the seasons change in the valley below. I have seen the fields turn from green to gold to white with snow and back to green again. I have watched the city grow, new buildings rising, old ones falling, the patterns of light shifting with the years. I have become a fixture at the edge, a silhouette against the gray sky that the people below sometimes glimpse and wonder about. They tell stories about me, I think. The figure on the hill. The watcher at the boundary. They don't know that I am watching them live the life I lost, that I am measuring my absence in their presence. The street is still behind me. It hasn't changed, hasn't decayed, hasn't been reclaimed by the dead earth it crosses. It waits, patient as only an infinite thing can be, for me to change my mind. Some days I feel its pull, the old habit of walking, the old need to move. Some days I almost stand, almost turn, almost take that first step back into the endless gray. But then I look at the valley, at the river and the city and the people living their finite, precious lives, and I remember why I stopped. I followed the street to its edge. I stood where my journey had begun. And I learned that the beginning and the end are the same place, seen from different directions. I am the missing piece, the crack that will not heal, the loop that lost its ending. I am the man who walked away from the world and found that the world had walked away from him too. The sun is setting again. The valley is beautiful in the evening light, more beautiful than any skyline I ever chased, more real than any loop I ever inhabited. I watch it, and I feel the gray sky behind me pressing close, and I know that this is where I will stay. Not because I can't go back, but because going back would mean pretending that the journey never happened, that I never became what I am. I am the watcher now. The witness. The ghost at the edge of the world I left behind. And somewhere in the valley below, a child looks up at the hill and sees a figure against the fading light. They ask their parent who that is, and the parent doesn't know, doesn't have a story to tell, doesn't understand that they are looking at a man who walked to the end of everything and found only the beginning. The child will remember, maybe. Will grow up and tell their own children about the silhouette on the hill, the one who never moves, the one who watches the valley with a patience that feels like waiting. I am waiting. I don't know for what. Maybe for the valley to empty, for the city to fall, for the world below to become as still as the world behind me. Maybe for the street to finally dissolve, releasing me from the last thread that ties me to the journey. Maybe for nothing at all. The waiting has become its own kind of peace, its own version of the ending I could never find. The sun is gone now. The valley is dark, its lights glittering like stars fallen to earth. The gray sky behind me is darker still, an absence that feels almost warm. I sit at the edge, between the life I cannot rejoin and the death I cannot enter, and I am, for the first time since the loop began, exactly where I am supposed to be. I followed the street to its edge. I stood where my journey had begun. And I understood, at last, that the journey was never about reaching somewhere new. It was about returning to the place I had always been, seeing it for the first time, and recognizing it as home. The rain had stopped an hour before, but the streets were still wet, still gleaming under the streetlights like the skin of something that had just emerged from deep water. I was walking home from a friend's apartment, the kind of evening that stretches too long because you're afraid of the silence waiting in your own rooms. We had talked about nothing important, laughed at nothing funny, drunk tea that had gone cold hours ago. Now it was after midnight, and the city had that hollowed-out feeling it gets in the small hours, when even the cars seem to be holding their breath. I saw her from half a block away. A woman, leaning against a lamp post at the corner of Ash and 3rd. Her posture was casual, one shoulder against the metal, her head tilted slightly as if she was listening to something only she could hear. She wore a dark coat, longer than was fashionable, and her hair was dark too, falling past her shoulders in waves that caught the orange light and held it. I almost crossed the street. A woman alone at night, a man walking alone, the math of safety is simple, and I had learned it years ago. But something about her stillness made me hesitate. She wasn't looking at me. She wasn't looking at anything. She was just there, leaning, as if she had been there for hours and would be there for hours more, as if the lamp post was the only thing holding her to the earth. I kept walking. I don't know why. The sensible part of my brain was screaming, but the other part, the curious part, the part that had spent too many nights alone and too many days wondering if anyone else felt the same hollowness, that part wanted to see her face. I walked past her on the opposite side of the street, my eyes forward, my pace steady. I didn't look. I didn't want to seem like I was looking. But at the corner, just before I turned onto my street, I glanced back. She was looking at me. Not the way people look when they notice someone passing. The way people look when they've been waiting for someone to arrive. Her face was ordinary, the kind of face you forget immediately, but her eyes were not ordinary. They were dark, almost black in the lamplight, and they held an expression I couldn't name. Not curiosity, not interest, not threat. Just attention. Pure, unwavering attention, as if I was the only thing in the world worth looking at. I turned the corner quickly. I walked faster. I didn't run, because running would mean admitting that something was wrong, and I wasn't ready to admit that yet. My apartment was 3 blocks away. 3 blocks of wet sidewalks and humming streetlights and the echo of my own footsteps. I made it home. I locked the door. I stood in my dark living room, looking out the window at the street below, and I told myself it was nothing. A woman waiting for someone. A woman lost in thought. A woman who happened to look up at the wrong moment. Nothing. I didn't sleep well. The kind of sleep where you're aware of being asleep, where dreams and wakefulness blur into a gray exhaustion that leaves you more tired than when you began. I woke with the sun, made coffee, went to work. The day was normal. The evening was normal. By midnight, I had almost forgotten. I walked the same route home. Not because I wanted to see her again, but because it was the shortest way, the familiar way, the way that required no thought. The streets were wet again, more rain, another storm passing through, and the air had that clean, cold smell that comes after a good downpour. I passed the corner of Ash and 3rd without slowing. I didn't look at the lamp post. I didn't want to know. She was there. Same lamp post. Same posture. One shoulder against the metal, head tilted, dark coat catching the light. She was leaning as if she had never moved, as if the hours between last night and tonight were just a blink, a pause, a breath held and released. I stopped walking. I was half a block away, but I could see her clearly, and this time she was looking at me from the moment I came into view. She had been waiting. She had known I would come. I should have turned around. I should have crossed the street, taken a different route, called a cab, done anything but walk toward her. But my feet kept moving, slower now, as if the decision had been made somewhere below thought. I walked until I was 20 feet from her, close enough to see the details I had missed before. The coat was wet at the shoulders, as if she had been standing in the rain that had stopped hours ago. Her hair was damp, clinging to her cheeks. She was cold, I realized. Shivering slightly, though she made no move to warm herself. "Are you okay?" The words came out before I could stop them. Stupid words. Normal words. Words you say to a stranger who might need help. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely a movement of the lips, but it changed her face entirely. The ordinariness fell away, and beneath it was something ancient, something patient, something that had been leaning against lamp posts for longer than lamp posts had existed. "I'm waiting," she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried in the wet air like a bell. "For who?" She tilted her head further, the bird-like movement I remembered from dreams I hadn't known I'd had. "For you. I've been waiting for you for a very long time. I should have run. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run. But I didn't. I stood there, 20 feet from her, and I asked the question that was forming in the coldest part of my mind. How long?" She looked up at the lamp post, then back at me. "Do you remember this corner? From before?" I didn't. I had lived in this neighborhood for 3 years, walked this route hundreds of times. The corner of Ash and 3rd was just a corner, unremarkable, forgettable. I shook my head. "No," she said softly. "You wouldn't. You weren't here then." She pushed herself off the lamp post, a slow, deliberate movement, as if her body had forgotten how to move. She took a step toward me. I took a step back. She stopped. "I was here," she said. "A long time ago. I was standing here, just like this, waiting for someone. Not you. Someone else. Someone who never came." She looked down at the wet pavement, at her own feet, at the shadow that pooled beneath her. "I waited all night. The sun came up, and I was still here. The sun went down, and I was still here. Days passed. Weeks. I stopped counting. The streetlight above her hummed. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it was unmistakable, a low vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I became part of this corner," she continued. "Part of the lamp post. Part of the night. People passed me, but they didn't see me. Not really. I was just a woman waiting, and then I was just a shadow, and then I was just a memory of a woman waiting. Until you." "Until me?" My voice was barely a whisper. She looked up, and her eyes were dark, dark as the space between stars. "You saw me. Last night, you saw me. Really saw me. Not just a woman at a bus stop, not just a stranger to be avoided. You looked at me, and you wondered. And that wondering, it called me back. I wanted to say I didn't understand, but I did. I understood in the way you understand a nightmare while you're still in it, the logic of it pressing against your skin like water. I've been waiting for someone to see me for so long," she said. "And now you're here. Now you see me. She took another step. I didn't move this time. Do you know what that means? I shook my head, though I was beginning to suspect. It means you're the one who has to take my place. The words hung in the air between us, heavy as the wet air, cold as the rain that had stopped hours ago. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw the thinness of her, the way the light seemed to pass through her edges, the way her shadow didn't quite match her posture. She was fading. She had been fading for longer than I could imagine. And I, by seeing her, by acknowledging her existence, had become her anchor. I can't, I said. I have a life. You had a life, she interrupted gently. You still have it, for now. But you've been walking past this corner for 3 years, and you never noticed me until last night. Why do you think that is? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Something in you was ready, she said. Something in you was already waiting, just like I was. We're the same, you and I. We've been waiting for someone to see us, to acknowledge us, to take our place so we can finally stop. The humming grew louder. The streetlight flickered. I looked around, hoping for a car, a pedestrian, anyone who would break this moment and let reality reassert itself. The street was empty. It would always be empty now, I realized. This was a corner that existed outside of normal time, a place where waiting had become a kind of eternity. What happens if I walk away? I asked. She smiled again, that small, sad smile. You've tried that. You walked away last night. You came back. I didn't mean to, doesn't matter. You came back. You'll always come back now. The corner has you. I have you. She gestured at the lamp post, at the wet pavement, at the dark windows of the buildings around us. This is a place where waiting accumulates. Every person who ever stood here and waited for someone who never came left a little bit of themselves behind. I'm just the one who collected it all. And now it's your turn. I felt it then. A pull, not physical but deeper, a gravity that originated in the space between my ribs. The corner wanted me. The lamp post wanted me. The woman who had been waiting for eternity wanted me to take her place so she could finally leave. I don't want to, I said. It sounded childish even to me. No one ever does, she said. But wanting doesn't matter here. Only waiting matters. Only the patience of the ones who stay. She moved toward me, and this time I couldn't step back. My feet were rooted to the wet pavement, fixed as the lamp post itself. She stopped inches from me, close enough that I could feel the cold radiating from her, the absolute zero of someone who had been standing in the night for longer than nights had existed. You'll learn to accept it, she whispered. It takes time, lots of time, but you will. The waiting becomes part of you. Becomes all of you. And then one day, someone will see you, really see you, and you'll pass it on. She reached up and touched my cheek. Her fingers were cold, so cold, but beneath the cold there was something else. Relief. Release. The gratitude of someone finally allowed to stop. I release you, she said softly. I release you to this corner, to this lamp post, to the patience of the night. And I thank you for seeing me. She stepped back. For a moment, she was solid, real, a woman in a dark coat with dark hair and dark eyes. Then she began to fade. Not quickly, but gradually, the way a memory fades when you stop thinking about it. Her edges softened. Her colors drained. Her form became translucent, then transparent, then nothing at all. The last thing to go was her smile, that small, sad smile, and then she was gone, and I was alone at the corner of Ash and 3rd, leaning against the lamp post as if I'd been there for hours. I tried to move. I couldn't. My body had become part of the corner, part of the night, part of the accumulation of waiting that had been building here for longer than anyone could remember. I could turn my head, could blink, could breathe. But I couldn't leave. The lamp post held me, not physically but in some deeper way, the way a story holds its characters, the way a memory holds its moments. The night passed. The sun rose, pale and weak through the clouds. People passed me on their way to work, their way to school, their way to lives that moved forward. None of them saw me. Not really. I was just a woman leaning against a lamp post, and then I was just a shadow, and then I was just a memory of a woman leaning against a lamp post. Days passed. Weeks. I stopped counting. I learned her patience. I learned the rhythm of the corner, the way the light changed, the way the rain fell, the way the night always returned. I learned to wait without expecting, to stand without tiring, to exist without living. The waiting became part of me, then all of me. I became the corner. The corner became me. Last night, someone saw me. A man, walking alone in the rain, his head down against the wet. He passed the corner, then stopped, then looked back. Our eyes met. He saw me. Really saw me. I saw the recognition in his face, the dawning understanding that something was wrong, that a woman leaning against a lamp post at midnight should not be as still as I was, should not be as patient as I was. He didn't run. He walked toward me, slowly, the way you approach something you're not sure is real. He stopped 20 feet away, and he asked if I was okay. I almost laughed. Almost. But laughter is for people who can still move, still leave, still have lives beyond the corner. I smiled at him. A small smile. The same smile she had given me, all those years ago. And I said the words she had said, the words I had been waiting to say for longer than I could measure. I'm waiting. For you. I've been waiting for you for a very long time. He didn't run either. He stood there, 20 feet away, and I could see the understanding forming in his eyes, the terrible recognition that he had been chosen, that his seeing me had bound him to this place as surely as I had been bound. I pushed myself off the lamp post. It took effort, my body had forgotten how to move, but I did it. I took a step toward him. He took a step back. I stopped. I release you, I said softly. I release you to this corner, to this lamp post, to the patience of the night. And I thank you for seeing me. He didn't understand yet. He would. Give him time. Give him nights and days and years of waiting, and he would understand. And one day, someone would see him, and he would pass it on, and the waiting would continue, eternal and patient, at the corner of Ash and 3rd. I faded. Not quickly, but gradually, the way a memory fades when you stop thinking about it. The last thing I saw was his face, frozen in the moment of becoming what I had been, what she had been, what all the waiters before us had been. Then I was gone, and he was alone, leaning against the lamp post as if he'd been there for hours. He'll learn. They always do. The corner teaches patience. The night teaches stillness. And somewhere, in a time that doesn't exist, a woman who waited for eternity finally rests, finally stops, finally becomes the nothing she always was beneath the waiting. I am that nothing now. I am the space between her release and his capture. I am the breath held, the pause between heartbeats, the moment when waiting ends and something else begins. I don't know what that something else is. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm still fading, still dissolving, still becoming the absence that was always waiting at the edge of the corner. But I can feel it coming. The end of waiting. The release that is not a new beginning but a true ending, the kind that doesn't leave anything behind to wait again. She reached it, I think. She reached it through me. And I will reach it through him, through the man who is now leaning against the lamp post, learning the patience of the night, becoming the anchor for the next lost soul who sees too much and walks too close. The corner of Ash and 3rd is quiet tonight. The rain has stopped. The streets are wet and gleaming. A man leans against a lamp post, his head tilted slightly, his eyes on the distance. He is waiting. He will always wait. Until someone sees him. Until someone takes his place. Until the waiting passes on, as it always does, as it always will. I am somewhere else now. Somewhere without corners, without lamp posts, without the patience of the night. I am the space where waiting ends. I am the silence after the last footstep. I am what she became, what he will become, what we all become when the waiting finally stops. It's quiet here. Peaceful. The kind of peace you can't find in the world of movement and time and forward motion. I think I'll stay. I think I've earned the right to stay. And somewhere behind me, at the corner of Ash and 3rd, the night continues. The lamp post hums. The wet pavement gleams. And a man leans against the metal, waiting for someone to see him, waiting to pass on the patience he never asked for, waiting to become what I have become. The waiting never ends. It just changes who does it. The corner came into view the way things do in dreams, not suddenly, but with the slow certainty of something that has always been there, waiting to be noticed. I had been walking for what felt like hours, though the sky hadn't changed, hadn't darkened or lightened, just stayed that same pale gray that exists between dusk and dawn. The streets were familiar in the way of places you've seen in photographs but never visited. I knew every building, every window, every crack in the pavement, and yet I had never been here before. Not in waking life. Not in memory. But somewhere deeper, somewhere the mind keeps its secrets, I had been here 1,000 times. The corner was where two streets met, neither of which had signs. The buildings on either side were old, their brick darkened by decades of weather, their windows dark and empty. A single streetlight stood at the apex of the intersection, its bulb casting a pale circle on the wet pavement below. It had been raining. I could feel it in the air, that clean, cold smell, and in the sheen of water on the asphalt. But the rain had stopped, and now there was only the silence, and the light, and me. I stopped walking when I reached the edge of the light. Something held me there, some instinct that told me this circle was different from the darkness around it. The light was thin, almost weak, but it had a quality I couldn't name, a patience, a waiting. I stood at its edge and looked into the pool of illumination, and I saw nothing. Just wet pavement, just the base of the streetlight, just the ordinary emptiness of a corner where no one ever came. Then I heard my voice. Not from my mouth. From the corner itself. From somewhere inside that circle of pale light, my own voice called out, clear and unmistakable, speaking words I couldn't quite catch. It was distant, as if coming from far away, but also close, as if the speaker was standing just behind me. I spun around. No one. The street stretched empty in both directions, lined with buildings that watched like silent witnesses. I turned back to the corner. The voice came again, closer now, and this time I caught the words. Hello? Is anyone there? It was me. My voice, my tone, my inflection. The way I sound when I'm nervous, when I'm trying to be brave but not quite succeeding. I had said those words before. I knew I had. But when? Where? The memory wouldn't come. I stepped into the light. The moment I crossed the threshold, the voice stopped. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind of silence that has weight, that presses against your ears until you can hear your own blood moving. I stood under the streetlight and waited. Nothing happened. No voice, no movement, no change. Just me, alone in a circle of pale light at the intersection of two nameless streets. I don't know how long I stood there. Time had become slippery, the way it does in places that exist outside of normal geography. Minutes might have passed. Hours. Days. The sky didn't change, the light didn't dim, and I didn't move. I was waiting, though I didn't know for what. Waiting for the voice to return. Waiting for an answer. Waiting for something to explain why I was here, in this place I had never been, hearing myself call from somewhere I couldn't see. The voice came again when I stepped out of the light. As soon as my foot touched the darkness beyond the circle, I heard it, my voice, calling from the corner behind me. "Hello? Is anyone there?" The same words, the same tone, the same nervous hope. I spun around. The corner was empty. Just the streetlight, just the wet pavement, just the pale circle of light waiting for someone to enter. I stepped back into the light. The voice stopped. I stepped out. It started again. In and out, like a game I didn't understand, like a puzzle with no solution. Every time I left the circle, my voice called from within it. Every time I entered, the silence returned. The corner had become a trap, a loop, a recording of a moment that had happened somewhere in time and was now playing forever. I sat down at the edge of the light, my legs too tired to stand anymore. I watched the empty circle and listened to the silence, and I tried to remember. When had I said those words? Where had I been? The memory was there, I knew it was, buried under years of forgetting, under layers of life that had happened since. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift back through the years, through the apartments and jobs and relationships, through the ordinary progression of a life that had led me here, to this nameless corner, to this impossible loop. And then I remembered. It was 10 years ago. I was 22, new to the city, lost in a neighborhood I didn't know. I had taken a wrong turn somewhere, walked too far, ended up in a part of town that wasn't on my map. The streets were old, the buildings dark, the streetlights few and far between. I was scared, though I wouldn't have admitted it then. Scared of being alone, scared of being lost, scared of the city that seemed to swallow people whole. I came to a corner. Two streets meeting, no signs, a single streetlight casting a pale circle on the wet pavement. It had been raining. I remembered the smell, the clean cold, the sheen of water on the asphalt. I stopped at the edge of the light and called out, hoping someone would hear me, hoping someone would tell me which way to go. "Hello? Is anyone there?" No one answered. I stood there for a long time, waiting, hoping, listening to the silence. Then I chose a direction and walked away. I found my way home eventually. I forgot about the corner, about the night, about the fear. Life moved on. Years passed. I became someone else, someone who didn't get lost, someone who didn't call into the darkness hoping for an answer. But the corner remembered. The corner had kept my voice, trapped it in the light, played it over and over for anyone who passed. And now I had come back. Now I was the one passing, the one hearing, the one who had to decide what to do with the echo of my own fear. I stood up. I stepped into the light, and the silence fell. I stood in the center of the circle, where my younger self had stood 10 years ago, and I looked around at the empty streets, the dark buildings, the pale sky. Nothing had changed. The corner was exactly as I remembered it, exactly as it had been that night, frozen in time, waiting for someone to answer the call. I opened my mouth. I didn't know what I was going to say, but the words came anyway, drawn from somewhere deeper than memory. "I'm here," I said. "I'm here now. You don't have to call anymore." The silence deepened. The light flickered. And from somewhere behind me, from the darkness beyond the circle, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, approaching. I didn't turn. I stood in the center of the light and waited, the way my younger self had waited, the way the corner had waited for 10 years for someone to answer. The footsteps stopped at the edge of the circle. I felt a presence there, a weight of attention, a gaze that held me without touching. I still didn't turn. I was afraid of what I would see. Afraid that it would be myself, the younger me, the lost boy who had called into the darkness and never received an answer. Afraid that it would be nothing at all, just the echo given form, just the loneliness made manifest. "Hello?" The voice came from behind me. My voice. The same words, the same tone, the same nervous hope. But softer now, as if the speaker was tired of calling, tired of waiting, tired of the endless loop of unanswered questions. I turned around. He stood at the edge of the light, just outside the circle, exactly where I had stood 10 years ago. He was young, so young, his face smooth with the innocence of 22, his eyes wide with the fear of being lost in a city that didn't care. He was me. The me I had been. The me I had left behind somewhere in the years between then and now. He looked at me, and I saw the hope flicker in his eyes. Hope that I was someone who could help. Hope that the waiting was over. Hope that the voice he had sent into the darkness had finally been answered. "Are you real?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. Was I real? Was he? We were the same person, separated by 10 years and the strange physics of a corner that held on to moments the way other places held on to light. He was the past, preserved in amber, calling forever into a darkness that had finally answered. I was the future, returned to the scene of an old fear, standing in the light that had held his voice for a decade. "I'm you," I said. "From later. From after." He stared at me, his young face working through the implications. Did I get home? That night? Did I find my way? I nodded. You found your way. You grew up. You forgot about this place. Then why are you here? His voice was small, the voice of someone who suspects the answer but needs to hear it anyway. Because you never stopped calling, I said. Because this corner kept your voice, played it over and over, and I heard it. I came back to answer. He stepped forward, into the light. For a moment we stood together, the same person at two different ages, united in the pale circle of a streetlight at a corner that had no name. He looked at me, and I saw the fear in his eyes begin to fade, replaced by something else. Understanding, maybe. Or acceptance. Or the simple relief of finally being heard. "I've been calling for so long," he whispered. "I didn't know if anyone would ever come." "I'm here now," I said. "You can stop." He smiled, a small, tentative smile, the smile of someone who has been alone for too long and isn't sure how to be with another person. Then he looked past me, into the darkness beyond the circle, and his expression changed. "There are others," he said. I turned. Beyond the light, in the darkness that lined the nameless streets, I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Standing at the edges of the shadows, watching us, waiting. They were all ages, all types, all wearing the same expression of hopeful fear. They were the lost. The ones who had called into the darkness and never received an answer. The ones whose voices were still echoing somewhere, trapped in corners and alleys and empty streets, waiting for someone to hear. They stepped forward, slowly, hesitantly, as if afraid the light would burn them. One by one, they entered the circle, joining me and my younger self in the pool of illumination. A woman who had called for help after her car broke down. A child who had gotten separated from his parents at a fair. An old man who had wandered away from a nursing home, calling for a nurse who never came. They filled the circle, standing close but not touching, their eyes fixed on me with a hope that was painful to see. "You came back," the woman said. "You're the first one who came back." I didn't understand. "The first? Most people never hear us," the child said. "They walk past, and we call, and they don't hear. But you heard. You came back." The old man nodded. "We've been waiting. All of us. Waiting for someone to answer." I looked at my younger self. He was watching the others with an expression I couldn't read. "Did you know?" I asked him. "When you were calling, did you know there were others?" He shook his head. "I only heard myself. I thought I was alone." The woman stepped closer. "You were. We all were. That's the way it works. Each of us calls alone, waits alone, echoes alone. Until someone comes. Until someone answers. And then what? I asked. She smiled, and there was something in that smile that made my blood cold. Then we can stop calling. Then we can rest. The circle of light began to dim. Not quickly, but gradually, as if the streetlight was finally running out of power after years of holding these voices, these moments, these lost souls. The figures around me began to fade, their edges softening, their colors draining, the same way she had faded at the corner of Ash and 3rd, the same way I had watched release happen from the other side. My younger self reached out and touched my arm. His fingers were cold, so cold, but beneath the cold there was warmth, the warmth of gratitude, of completion, of a journey finally ended. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for coming back." He faded. They all faded. The circle grew dimmer, the light shrinking until it was just a small pool at my feet, barely enough to see by. And then, with a soft sigh that might have been the streetlight or might have been the collective breath of all those released souls, the light went out. I stood in darkness. True darkness, the kind that has no edges, no distance, no reference points. I couldn't see my hands, couldn't see the ground, couldn't see anything. But I could hear. The silence was absolute, but beneath it, faint as a whisper, I heard my own voice. Not calling this time. Speaking softly, as if from a great distance, saying words I couldn't quite catch. I listened. The voice came again, closer now, and this time I understood. "Thank you," it said. "Thank you for answering." Then the voice was gone, and I was alone in the dark, at a corner that had no name, at a place that had held the echoes of the lost for longer than anyone could remember. The lost were gone now. Released. Finally silent after years of calling into an emptiness that had, at last, answered. I don't know how long I stood there. Time had lost its meaning again, the way it always does in places that exist outside of normal geography. Eventually, the darkness began to lighten, not with the return of the streetlight but with something else, something softer. Dawn, I realized. The pale gray of early morning, seeping into the sky, revealing the world around me. The corner was ordinary now. Two streets meeting, no signs, a single streetlight standing dark and silent. The buildings on either side were old but not threatening, their windows reflecting the growing light. The pavement was dry. The rain had stopped long ago, or maybe it had never rained at all. I was standing in the center of an ordinary intersection in an ordinary part of a city I didn't recognize. I walked away. I didn't look back. I walked until I found a bus stop, a coffee shop, a street with a name I knew. I went home. I lived my life. Days passed, weeks, months. I didn't forget the corner, but I stopped thinking about it every moment. It became a memory, then a story I told myself, then a dream I wasn't sure I'd actually had. But sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet and the streets are wet with rain, I hear it. My voice. Not calling, not asking, just whispering from somewhere far away, saying words I can never quite catch. I listen, and I wait, and I wonder if the corner is calling again, if there are more lost souls waiting to be answered, if I will ever be called back to stand in that pale circle of light and release another wave of echoes into silence. Last night, I heard it clearly for the first time in months. My voice, soft as breath, saying 3 words I had said to my younger self in that circle of fading light. You can stop. I don't know who I was speaking to. Maybe myself. Maybe all of us. Maybe the corner itself, which had held the echoes for so long that it had become an echo, a place that existed only because voices kept it alive. I spoke into the darkness of my bedroom, into the silence of the late night, and I felt something shift. Something release. Something finally, after all this time, let go. The corner is quiet now. I know this without visiting, without checking, without any evidence but the feeling in my chest when I think of it. The voices are silent. The echoes have faded. The lost have been found, answered, released into whatever comes after waiting. But I still hear my own voice sometimes. Not calling, not asking, just speaking softly from somewhere far away, saying words I can never quite catch. I think it's the corner, reminding me. Reminding me that I answered. Reminding me that I came back. Reminding me that somewhere, in a place that has no name, a young man called into the darkness and was heard. I am that young man. I am the one who called. I am the one who answered. I am the echo and the silence, the question and the reply. The corner had no name, only the echo of my own voice calling. And now the echo is gone, and the voice is silent, and I am left with the quiet knowledge that some questions take 10 years to answer, and some answers take a lifetime to understand. The rain has started again. I can hear it against the window, soft and steady, washing the streets clean. Somewhere out there, at an intersection that has no name, a streetlight stands dark and silent. No one calls from its circle of light. No one waits at its edge. The corner is just a corner now, ordinary and forgettable, the way all places become when the echoes finally fade. But I remember. I will always remember. The corner where I called. The corner where I answered. The corner that held my voice for 10 years and gave it back when I was ready to hear. I close my eyes, and in the darkness behind my lids, I see it. The pale circle of light. The wet pavement. The young man standing at the edge, calling into the silence. I see myself, from 10 years away, watching him with the patience of someone who knows the answer will come. I see him turn, see the hope in his eyes, see the moment when he realizes that he has been heard. And I hear my voice, soft as breath, saying the words that have been waiting all these years to be spoken. I'm here. You can stop now. I couldn't. The question hung in the air between us, heavy with something I didn't understand. She pushed herself off the lamp post and took a step toward me. Just one. Try it, she said. Tomorrow night. Walk a different way. See where it leads. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between streetlights before I could say another word. I should have ignored her. I should have kept walking my route, the safe route, the route I knew. But the next night, at the corner of the 5th block, I stopped. I looked left, toward the coffee shop, the familiar way home. Then I looked right, down a street I had never taken, a street that disappeared into darkness. I turned right. The street was narrow, older than the ones I knew. The buildings leaned slightly, their bricks dark with age. The streetlights were farther apart here, leaving long stretches of shadow between them. I walked slowly, listening to my footsteps echo off walls that had stood for a century. I walked for 10 minutes. 20. The street curved gently, then curved again. I passed buildings I had never seen, corners I didn't recognize. The city was different here. Older. Quieter. As if I had stepped into a version of it that existed alongside my own, hidden and waiting. And then I saw her. Standing under another streetlight, at another corner, waiting. You came, she said. Where are we? I asked. What is this place? She smiled that small smile. This is the other route. The one you never take. The one that's always been here, waiting for you to find it. I looked around. The street stretched in both directions, empty and silent. Why did you want me to find it? She stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the dampness in her hair, the paleness of her skin. Because someone had to show me, once. And now it's my turn to show you. Show me what? She raised her hand and pointed down the street, into the darkness beyond the next pool of light. The end. The place where all the routes meet. The place you can only reach by walking the path you've never walked. I looked where she pointed. The street disappeared into shadow. I couldn't see what waited there. I couldn't see anything. I'm scared, I said. I know. Her voice was gentle now. Kind. Everyone is, the first time. But you don't have to be afraid. I'll be with you. Until you don't need me anymore. She held out her hand. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I took it. We walked together into the darkness. The street curved and twisted, but she guided me, her hand warm in mine, her presence a comfort in the unfamiliar night. We passed buildings that seemed to breathe, streetlights that hummed with songs I almost recognized. The city opened around us, revealing streets I had never imagined, corners that held secrets I couldn't name. And then, finally, we reached the end. A clearing, where the street opened into a circle of light. In the center stood a single lamp post, its bulb glowing warm and steady. Nothing else. Just the light, and the pavement, and the silence. This is it, she said. The place where all the routes meet. I looked around. There's nothing here. She smiled. That's the point. There's nothing here because you haven't brought anything yet. The routes don't end here. They begin here. Every path you've ever walked started at this circle. Every path you'll ever walk will return to it. I didn't understand. I still don't, not completely. But standing there, in that circle of light, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The simple, quiet peace of being exactly where I was supposed to be. She squeezed my hand, then let go. I have to go now. There are others waiting for me. Others who need to be shown the other route. Will I see you again? She looked at me with those dark eyes, and for a moment, I saw something ancient in them. Something patient. Something that had been waiting for longer than I could imagine. Every time you walk a new path, she said. Every time you choose the route you've never taken, I'll be there, at the first corner, waiting to show you where it leads. She stepped back, into the darkness beyond the circle. I watched her fade, watched her become shadow, watched her disappear into the city that held all the routes I had never walked. I stood alone in the circle of light for a long time. Then I turned and walked back the way I had come. The streets were familiar now, the way home clear and straight. I reached my apartment as dawn was breaking, gray and soft through the windows. I slept. When I woke, the day was ordinary. I went to work. I came home. That night, at the corner of the 5th block, I stopped again. I looked left, toward the coffee shop, the familiar way. Then I looked right, down the narrow street, toward the darkness and the unknown. I turned right. And there she was. Standing under the first streetlight, waiting. She smiled that small smile, and I smiled back. Again? She asked. I nodded. Again. We walked together into the night, into the other route, into the path I had never taken. Behind us, the familiar street faded. Ahead, the city opened, endless and waiting, full of corners I had never turned and lights I had never seen. I don't know where we're going. I don't know what we'll find. But I know she'll be there, at every first corner, guiding me through the routes I never knew existed. And someday, when I've walked them all, I'll find myself back at that circle of light. The place where all the routes meet. The place where every journey begins. She'll be there too, I think. Waiting to take my hand and show me the next path, the one beyond the last, the one that leads somewhere even she hasn't seen. Until then, I walk. I walk the other route, the one I never took, the one that's been waiting for me all along. And at every first corner, under every first light, she's there. Waiting. Smiling. Ready to show me where the path leads. The rain had stopped just before midnight, leaving the streets wet and gleaming under the streetlights. I was walking home from work, the same route I had walked for 3 years. Left at the coffee shop, right at the bookstore, straight for 6 blocks, left at the old theater. I knew every crack in the pavement, every hum of every streetlight, every shadow that fell across my path. I saw her at the corner of the 5th block. A woman, standing under the light, perfectly still. She wasn't looking at anything. She was just there, leaning against the lamp post as if she had been waiting for hours. I slowed down. Something felt wrong. The street was empty, the way it always was at this hour, but the emptiness felt different now. Heavier. Like the city was holding its breath. I kept walking. I told myself she was just waiting for someone. Nothing to be afraid of. But as I passed her, I felt her eyes on me. Not looking. Watching. I didn't look back. I walked faster. Turned the corner onto my street and didn't stop until I was inside my apartment with the door locked and all the lights on. The next night, she was there again. Same corner. Same lamp post. Same stillness. This time, when I passed, she spoke. "You've walked this route 1,000 times." Her voice was soft, barely a whisper, but it carried in the silence like a bell. I stopped. I turned. She was looking at me now, really looking, and her eyes were dark. Dark as the space between stars. "I know," I said. She smiled. Just a small movement of the lips. "Do you ever wonder what would happen if you walked a different way?" I didn't answer. She pushed herself off the lamp post and raised her hand. Her finger began to trace in the air, following the exact path I had just walked. Left at the coffee shop, right at the bookstore, straight for 6 blocks, left at the theater. Where her finger moved, the air glowed. A thin line of pale gold, marking my route through the night. It hung there for a moment, visible and impossible. Then it faded. "That's your path," she said. "The one you walk every night. I just wanted you to see it. Just once." "Why?" She tilted her head, the way a bird does when considering something unusual. "Because tomorrow night, you're going to walk a different one. And I wanted you to remember what this one looked like." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between streetlights before I could say another word. The next night, at the corner of the 5th block, I stopped. I looked left, toward the coffee shop, the familiar way home. Then I looked right, down a street I had never taken. I turned right. The street was narrow, older than the ones I knew. The buildings leaned slightly, their bricks dark with age. The streetlights were farther apart here, leaving long stretches of shadow between them. I walked slowly, listening to my footsteps echo off walls that had stood for a century. I walked for 10 minutes. 20. The street curved gently, then curved again. I passed buildings I had never seen, corners I didn't recognize. The city was different here. Older. Quieter. As if I had stepped into a version of it that existed alongside my own. And then I saw her. Standing under another streetlight, at another corner, waiting. "You came," she said. "Where are we?" I asked. "This is the other route. The one you never take. The one that's always been here, waiting for you to find it." She raised her hand again, and her finger began to trace in the air. This time, the line was different. It curved and twisted, doubled back on itself, crossed and recrossed in patterns that made no sense. It glowed pale gold against the dark, a complex knot of light that hung in the air for a long moment. Then it faded. "That's your future," she said. "The route you'll walk from now on. It's longer than the old one. Harder. It doesn't end where you think it will." I stared at the empty space where the light had been. "I don't understand." She stepped closer. "You will. Follow the path. It will take you where you need to go." She pointed down the street, into the darkness beyond the next pool of light. I looked where she pointed. I couldn't see anything. But I could feel it. A pull. A gravity. A sense that something was waiting. I walked. The path led me through streets I had never seen, past buildings that seemed to shift as I approached, through intersections that shouldn't have existed. The light beneath my feet glowed faintly, guiding me through the maze, showing me the way when I couldn't see it myself. I walked for hours. Days. Time lost meaning. The path curved and twisted, but I followed it. It was the only thing in that shifting world that stayed constant. And then, without warning, the path ended. I stood at a corner, under a streetlight, on a street I recognized. The corner where I had first seen her. The beginning. She was there, waiting. "You followed it," she said. "I did." She smiled. That small smile. "Now you know." "Know what?" She raised her hand one last time. Her finger traced in the air, but this time, no light appeared. Just the motion, the gesture, the memory of what had been. "Now you're the one who traces the paths," she said. "Someone else will come. Someone who needs to see their route before they walk it. And you'll show them. The way I showed you." She began to fade. Not quickly, but gradually, the way the glowing lines had faded. Her edges softened. Her colors drained. The last thing to go was her smile. Then she was gone. I stood alone at the corner for a long time. The streetlight hummed above me. The pavement was wet with recent rain. The city was quiet, holding its breath, waiting for whatever came next. I waited too. Days passed. Weeks. Every night, I came to this corner and watched the empty streets. People passed sometimes, but none of them were the one. None of them needed their path traced. Until tonight. I see him now, walking toward me. Head down, following a route he's walked 1,000 times. He doesn't know what's waiting. He doesn't know that at this corner, under this light, everything is about to change. I raise my hand. My finger traces in the air, following the path he just walked. The line appears, pale gold against the dark, glowing briefly. Then it fades. He stops. He looks up. Our eyes meet. I smile. That small smile. "You've walked this route 1,000 times," I say. And the night begins again. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, still gleaming under the streetlights like the skin of something that had just emerged from deep water. I was walking home from work, the same route I had walked for 3 years. Left at the coffee shop, right at the bookstore, straight for 6 blocks, left at the old theater. I knew every crack in the pavement, every hum of every streetlight, every shadow that fell across my path. It was past midnight. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels deliberate, as if everything was holding its breath. My footsteps echoed off the buildings, too loud in the silence. I walked with my head down, watching my feet move through the puddles. I noticed her at the corner of the 5th block. A woman, standing under the light, perfectly still. She wasn't looking at anything. She was just there, leaning against the lamp post as if she had been there for hours. As if she had been waiting. I slowed down. Something felt wrong. The street was empty, the way it always was at this hour, but the emptiness felt different now. Heavier. Like the city was holding its breath. I kept walking. I told myself she was just waiting for someone. Nothing to be afraid of. But as I passed her, I felt her eyes on me. Not looking. Watching. I didn't look back. I walked faster. I turned the corner onto my street and didn't stop until I was inside my apartment with the door locked and all the lights on. The next night, she was there again. Same corner. Same lamp post. Same stillness. This time, I stopped. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled. Just a small movement of the lips, but it changed her face entirely. I'm the one who waits. Waits for what? For you. For anyone who walks this route. For the ones who need to see. I didn't understand. See what? She pushed herself off the lamp post and raised her hand. Her finger began to trace in the air, following the exact path I had just walked. Left at the coffee shop, right at the bookstore, straight for 6 blocks, left at the theater. Where her finger moved, the air glowed. A thin line of pale gold, marking my route through the night. It hung there for a moment, visible and impossible. Then it faded. That's your path, she said. The one you walk every night. I just wanted you to see it. Just once. Why? She tilted her head, the way a bird does when considering something unusual. Because tomorrow night, you're going to walk a different one. And I wanted you to remember what this one looked like. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between streetlights before I could say another word. I should have ignored her. I should have kept walking my route, the safe route, the route I knew. But the next night, at the corner of the 5th block, I stopped. I looked left, toward the coffee shop, the familiar way home. Then I looked right, down a street I had never taken. I turned right. The street was narrow, older than the ones I knew. The buildings leaned slightly, their bricks dark with age. The streetlights were farther apart here, leaving long stretches of shadow between them. I walked slowly, listening to my footsteps echo off walls that had stood for a century. I walked for 10 minutes. 20. The street curved gently, then curved again. I passed buildings I had never seen, corners I didn't recognize. The city was different here. Older. Quieter. As if I had stepped into a version of it that existed alongside my own, hidden and waiting. And then I noticed something strange. The buildings were leaning more now. Not just slightly. Noticeably. Their top floors tilted inward, toward the street, toward me. I stopped and looked up. The buildings on both sides leaned, their roofs almost touching above me. They formed a tunnel, a passage of brick and shadow leading into darkness. I should have turned back. Every instinct told me to turn back. But something pulled me forward. A curiosity. A gravity. A sense that whatever was waiting at the end of this tunnel was something I needed to find. I walked deeper. The buildings leaned closer. The gap above me narrowed until it was just a thin line of sky. The streetlights were fewer now, the shadows deeper. My footsteps echoed off walls that seemed to breathe, that seemed to watch. And then I saw her. Standing under a single streetlight, at the end of the tunnel, waiting. I walked toward her. When I reached the light, I stopped. She looked at me with those dark eyes, and for a moment, I saw something ancient in them. Something patient. Something that had been waiting for longer than I could imagine. You found it, she said. Found what? The other route. The one I showed you. She looked up at the leaning buildings, at the place where they met above us. They've been leaning for longer than you know. Toward this moment. Toward you. Me? You're the secret they've been keeping. The reason they bowed. The one they've been waiting for. I looked at the buildings. They pressed close on either side, their windows dark, their attention absolute. I felt their weight, their patience, their ancient knowing. What happens now? I asked. She smiled. That small smile. Now you walk the rest of the path. Alone. The tunnel continues beyond this clearing, leads somewhere I can't follow. You have to go on without me. Where does it lead? She shook her head slowly. I don't know. No one does. That's why you have to walk it. To find out. She began to fade. Not quickly, but gradually, the way the glowing line had faded. Her edges softened. Her colors drained. The last thing to go was her smile. Then she was gone, and I was alone under the light. I stood there for a long time. The buildings watched. The tunnel waited. Ahead, the path stretched into darkness, and I knew that I had to walk it, that there was no going back. I walked. The tunnel went on for what felt like hours. I think that's the point. The path doesn't end. It just changes. And as long as I keep walking it, as long as I keep turning right at that corner, I'll keep finding new secrets, new truths, new versions of myself waiting in the darkness. The buildings lean inward like old friends remembering a secret. I am the secret. I have always been the secret. And every time I walk the path, I remember a little more of what that means. Tonight, I'll walk it again. She'll be there, waiting under the first light. We'll walk together into the tunnel, into the leaning, into the darkness. And somewhere at the end, I'll find another piece of myself waiting to be discovered. The secret is me. It always was. The rain had stopped, but the alley behind my apartment was still wet, still gleaming in the dim light from the single bulb above the back door. I couldn't sleep. Again. The insomnia had been with me for weeks, and tonight it was worse than usual. I needed air. I needed to be outside, even if outside was just this narrow alley with its dumpster and its cracked pavement and its wall of old brick. I sat on an overturned crate and lit a cigarette I didn't really want. The smoke curled up into the darkness, disappearing into the night. I stared at the wall across from me. It was old brick, the kind they don't make anymore. Soft and red, weathered by decades of rain and sun and the slow grind of time. I had lived in this building for 2 years, walked past this wall hundreds of times, and never really looked at it. Not until tonight. The wall was covered in marks. Scratches, carvings, initials and dates and symbols carved into the soft brick by decades of people who had sat where I was sitting, thinking what I was thinking, leaving their mark on this wall before moving on. I had noticed them before, but tonight they seemed different. Older. Deeper. As if they were trying to tell me something. I stood up and walked closer. I ran my fingers over the carvings, feeling the texture of other people's existence. J.D. 1978. M.R. 1954. A name I couldn't read, carved in letters so old they had almost merged back into the brick. I found a loose piece of brick at my feet, a fragment with a sharp edge. Without thinking, I stepped up to a clear space on the wall and began to carve. My initials. J.W. Simple. Quick. The brick was soft, and the carving came easily. I made the letters deep, deeper than they needed to be. When I finished, I stepped back and looked at my work. J.W. fresh and clear against the old brick. My mark. My proof that I had been here. I went back inside. I slept. The next day, I forgot about the wall. But something pulled me back to that alley, night after night. I would sit on the crate, smoke my cigarette, and stare at the wall. The carvings seemed to shift in the dim light, to move and change when I wasn't looking directly at them. I told myself it was a trick of the eyes, the exhaustion, the late hour. But I kept coming back. One night, I wasn't alone. I heard footsteps behind me, soft on the wet pavement. I turned. A woman stood at the entrance to the alley, half hidden in shadow. She was young, or maybe not young at all, it was hard to tell in the darkness. Her face was ordinary, forgettable, but her eyes were not. They held something ancient, something patient. She walked toward me without speaking. I didn't move. I couldn't. She stopped in front of the wall, inches from the carvings, and looked at them for a long time. Then she turned to me. "You've been coming here," she said. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper, but it carried in the silence like a bell. I nodded. I can't sleep. She looked back at the wall. Neither can they. I didn't understand. Who? She raised her hand and touched the oldest carving, the one so faded it was almost invisible. All of them. Everyone who left their mark here. They're still here, in a way. Still watching. Still waiting. I stared at her. Waiting for what? She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned close to the wall, her lips almost touching the weathered brick. She breathed on the marks. A long, slow breath, warm against the cold surface. And the marks began to glow. Not brightly, not like light from a bulb. Softly, like embers, like the last traces of a fire. The initials sparkled, each one outlined in a pale gold that seemed to come from within the brick itself. J.D. 1978 glowed. M.R. 1954 glowed. The unreadable name, the one so old it had almost vanished, glowed brightest of all. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. What did you do? She turned to me, and in the glow of the marks, I could see her face clearly for the first time. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with features or symmetry. Beautiful in the way old things are beautiful, worn smooth by time, carrying the weight of years. I woke them, she said. They've been sleeping for so long. Too long. They needed to remember what it felt like to be seen. I looked at the wall. The initials sparkled like fresh ink, like they had been carved moments ago instead of decades. They pulsed gently, as if breathing, as if alive. Why? I asked. Why now? Why me? She stepped closer to me, close enough that I could feel the cold radiating from her skin. Because you're the one who keeps coming back. The one who sits and stares and wonders. The others, they carve their marks and leave. They never look back. But you look. You see. I shook my head. I don't understand any of this. She smiled. It was a small smile, gentle and sad. You don't have to understand. You just have to keep looking. Keep coming back. Keep being here when they wake. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness at the end of the alley. The glow from the wall faded slowly, the marks dimming until they were just ordinary carvings again. But I knew they weren't ordinary. Not anymore. I went back every night after that. I sat on the crate and watched the wall, waiting for the marks to glow again on their own. They didn't. But sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, I would feel something. A warmth from the brick, a pulse, a sense that I wasn't alone. A week later, I found a new carving on the wall. Fresh and deep, right next to mine. A name I didn't recognize, a date from last year. Someone else had been here, someone else had left their mark. And beneath it, faint but visible, the glow of older carvings sparkled like they were welcoming a new friend. I touched the new initials. They were warm. Alive. I started carving my own initials again. Not just once, but over and over, in different spots on the wall. J, W, J, W, J, W, dozens of them, scattered among the older marks. Each time I carved, I felt something shift in the air. Each time, the older marks seemed to pulse a little brighter, a little warmer. One night, she returned. I didn't hear her approach this time. I just looked up, and she was there, standing beside me, watching me carve. You're one of them now, she said. I looked at my hands, dirty with brick dust, my fingers raw from carving. I know. She smiled that small smile. How does it feel? I thought about it. The loneliness that had brought me to this alley night after night. The need to leave a mark, to prove I existed. The discovery that I wasn't the first, that I would never be the last. It feels like belonging, I said. She nodded. That's what they all say. In the end. She raised her hand and breathed on the wall. Not just on one spot, but across the entire surface. Her breath spread like mist, covering every carving, every initial, every date. And the whole wall sparkled. Hundreds of marks, glowing like fresh ink, pulsing with the warmth of all the people who had stood here and left their proof. I stood in the glow and felt something I had never felt before. Connection. Not to one person, not to one time, but to all of them. To everyone who had ever felt alone, who had ever needed to leave a mark, who had ever hoped that someone would see. She faded as the glow brightened, dissolving into the light until there was nothing left but the wall and the marks and me. I still go to the alley. Every night. I sit on the crate and watch the wall. Sometimes the marks sparkle on their own, a soft glow that comes and goes like breathing. Sometimes I add new ones, my initials in new spots, joining the endless chain. I know now that I'm not just leaving a mark. I'm joining a conversation. A conversation that started long before I was born and will continue long after I'm gone. Every carved initial is a voice, saying, I was here. Every sparkle is a response, saying, we know. We see you. You're not alone. She breathed on the marks, and they sparkled like fresh ink. Now I breathe on them too. Not with my breath, I don't have her power, but with my presence. With my attention. With my willingness to sit in the dark and watch and wait and remember. The wall is alive now. It breathes. It glows. It holds the marks of everyone who has ever felt alone, everyone who has ever needed to say, I was here. Including me. J.W. Right there, in the soft red brick. Fresh and clear, next to initials from 1842, from 1923, from last year. All of us together, sparkling in the dark, waiting for the next person to sit on this crate and wonder if anyone else has ever felt this way. The answer is yes. We're all here. We've always been here. And now you know. She breathed on the marks. They sparkled like fresh ink. And somewhere in the darkness, she's still breathing, still waiting, still waking the marks for anyone who cares to see. I see them. I'll always see them. And when I'm gone, someone else will sit on this crate and wonder. And the marks will sparkle for them too. The rain had stopped 3 hours ago, but the streets were still wet, still gleaming under the streetlights like the skin of something that had just emerged from deep water. I had been walking for what felt like days. Weeks. Time had lost its meaning somewhere back there, in the endless curves and circles and streets that led nowhere. I had come to this city looking for a fresh start. That was months ago, or years, or maybe just last week. I couldn't tell anymore. The streets all looked the same now. The same leaning buildings, the same humming streetlights, the same shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. I had tried everything to find a way out. I walked every street, marked every corner, scratched my initials into every lamp post I passed. Nothing worked. The city was a labyrinth of return, a maze designed by someone who didn't believe in exits. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I just walked, endlessly, hopelessly, searching for a straight line that would take me somewhere new. I never found one. Tonight, I was walking down a street I had walked 100 times before. I knew every crack in the pavement, every flicker of every streetlight, every shadow that fell across my path. I had marked this street, mapped it, memorized it. It always curved back to where I started. I stopped walking. Not because I had found something new. Not because I had seen a sign or a light or a figure in the distance. I stopped because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't walk another step. I couldn't search for another exit that didn't exist. I couldn't pretend that if I just tried hard enough, walked far enough, believed enough, I would find a way out. I sat down on the curb. Right there, in the middle of the endless curve, on the wet pavement under a humming streetlight. I sat down and I gave up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, empty and still, and accepted that this was my life now. This street. This curve. This endless walking that led nowhere. I closed my eyes. I let the silence wash over me. I stopped thinking about exits. I stopped thinking about escape. I stopped thinking altogether. And then I felt it. A shift. Not in the air, not in the light, but in the ground beneath me. The street relaxed. I felt it like you feel a held breath finally release, like you feel tension leave a body after years of carrying it. The pavement softened, just slightly, just enough to notice. The curve straightened, just a little, just enough to make a difference. I opened my eyes. The street was different. Not dramatically, not obviously, but undeniably different. The curve was gentler now, the buildings seemed less oppressive, the streetlight hummed a softer note. The whole street had relaxed, the way a person relaxes when they stop fighting. I stood up slowly. I took a step forward. The pavement felt different under my feet. Softer. Kinder. It didn't fight me the way it had before. It didn't curve to block my path. It just lay there, ordinary and patient, waiting for me to walk. I walked. The street was straight now. Not perfectly straight, there were still gentle curves, still soft bends, but straight enough. Straight enough that I could see ahead, could see where it led, could see that it wasn't just a circle anymore. I walked for an hour. The street led me through neighborhoods I had never seen, past buildings that were new and unfamiliar, under streetlights that didn't hum with that same threatening note. The city was opening up around me, revealing itself now that I had stopped fighting it. I reached an intersection. 4 streets met here, each one leading somewhere different. For the first time since I had arrived in this city, I had a choice. A real choice, not an illusion of choice that would just bring me back to where I started. I stood at the intersection and looked at each street in turn. They all looked ordinary. They all looked possible. I could go anywhere. I could finally leave. But I didn't. I turned around and walked back the way I had come. Not because I was trapped, I wasn't anymore. Not because I had to, I didn't. I walked back because I wanted to. Because the city that had been my prison had become something else. Something I didn't understand yet. I walked back through the relaxed streets, past the softer buildings, under the gentler lights. I walked until I reached the spot where I had given up, the curb where I had sat and surrendered. She was there. Waiting. The same woman who had appeared at other moments, other thresholds. She sat on the curb where I had sat, and she looked up at me with those ancient eyes. "You did it," she said. I sat down beside her. I gave up. That's what it took. The city wasn't keeping you here. You were keeping yourself here. Searching, fighting, struggling. The streets curved because you expected them to. Because you were so sure there was no way out that you made sure there wasn't. I thought about that. All those months of walking, of marking, of searching. All that effort, all that hope, all that despair. And it was me. I had done it to myself. The street relaxed, I said. When I stopped fighting, it relaxed. She nodded. It was never the enemy. It was just reflecting what you brought to it. Fear. Desperation. The need to escape. It gave you what you expected. I looked at the street. It was still soft, still gentle, still ordinary. What happens now? She smiled. That small smile. Now you can go. The exit is there, at the intersection. You saw it. You can walk away and never come back. I was quiet for a long time. The streetlight hummed its soft note. The pavement felt warm under my feet. The city that had been my prison felt like home. I don't want to leave, I said. She didn't look surprised. I know. This place, it changed me. It showed me things. It made me see. It made you see yourself, she said. That's what cities like this do, they hold up a mirror and make you look until you can't look away. I stood up. She stood with me. We faced each other in the soft light, two people who had met at the edge of understanding. What do I do now? I asked. She reached out and touched my chest, right over my heart. You live. You go back to your world, your life, your ordinary days. But you remember that the streets only curve when you expect them to. That the exits only disappear when you're too desperate to see them. You remember that you are the one who decides whether you're trapped or free. She stepped back. She began to fade, the way she always did. Will I see you again? I asked. She smiled one last time. Every time you remember. Every time you stop fighting. Every time you let the street relax beneath your feet. Then she was gone, and I was alone on the curb where I had given up and found everything. I walked back to the intersection. I stood there for a long time, looking at the 4 streets, each one leading somewhere. I could leave. I could go home. I could return to the life I had left behind. Instead, I chose a street and walked into the city, not to search for an exit this time. Just to walk. Just to see. Just to be in a place that had taught me more about myself than I had learned in all the years before. The street relaxed beneath my feet. The buildings stood straight and ordinary. The streetlights hummed their soft, patient songs. And I walked, without searching, without fighting, without needing to be anywhere but here. I gave up searching for an exit. And the street relaxed beneath my feet. I found what I was looking for only when I stopped looking. I found peace only when I stopped struggling. I found home only when I stopped trying to leave. The city is still here, the curves are still gentle, the street still open, the exit still waiting, but I don't need them anymore. I have what I came for. I have myself.
Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.